Hi everyone, my name is Tim Yarris. I'm the Civil 3D Product Manager here at Autodesk, and I wanted to share some time with you just going through some of the new enhancements that we've made to the quarter modeling workflows in Civil 3D. Our teams have been really hard at work talking to customers like yourselves and doing a lot of deep research within the product itself to just sort out how we can make the quarter modeling process a lot more efficient than you're used to using it today. So with that, I'm just going to kind of jump in, go through a handful of slides just to kind of set the stage of why we're working on what we're working on. And then I'm going to spend the majority of the time actually demoing some of these new tools in the product itself. So the first thing I wanted to do is just kind of touch on what our overall goal was with this whole quarter efficiency initiative. So as I mentioned before, it's just all about making common quarter modeling workflows more efficient than they had been in previous versions of Civil 3D. So this is all about first reducing the number of picks and clicks that you had to do to accomplish common tasks, just getting the UI out of your way so that you could concentrate not on clicking through dialog boxes and switching between things, and actually spending your time actually designing your roadways and other things. So what we did in that regard was we had a few key things that we wanted to focus on here. So think about components within like an overall quarter modeling process. So things like subassemblies and things like that. So three of the key things that we were looking at when working with these components is we wanted them to be as customizable as humanly possible. And so this is all about basically kind of building components that could be used for different types of conditions. So we have a lot of like in-the-box content, and it gets you by, but it takes a lot of customization to really get a lot of work to customize some of the tools in Civil 3D to get the results that you needed. Second thing we wanted to focus on was once we've allowed you to create those customized components, we want you to be able to reuse them in an easy way. So if you create a component, we don't want to have to recreate that component over and over and over again just to get the same results elsewhere in your model. So we wanted to make it so that basically you could create something once and then really easily copy it down to other areas of your model. And lastly, the final thing that I want to touch on here was that we just wanted these components to be shareable. So it's great that if you can make a common component in your drawing and copy it to different places in your quarter, but what about if you wanted to share that as a standard component for your entire project team? So basically we wanted to make sure that all these things were shareable so that you could really have nice repeatability and standardization across your project. So two areas that we wanted to focus on as far as these common components are concerned. First are around custom subassemblies. And you see these three themes on the side here just showing kind of where we were with custom subassemblies. So we have Subassembly Composer, and you could also create your own custom subassemblies using .NET programming, which is great. You could customize the heck out of your Civil 3D subassemblies to do whatever you really wanted. So we checked that box. Subassemblies are kind of reusable in that, and kind of shareable in that you can, like in previous versions of Civil 3D, you could like send somebody a PKT file, and then you could then like have that other person import it into Civil 3D and load it onto a tool palette, and then you're off and running. But what if that packet file changes? Then you have to delete it from your tool palette, you have to close Civil 3D, restart it, find the new sub PKT that someone has to tell you that it's available, and then you have to re-import it into Civil 3D, and then you had to put it on your tool palette, and then you had to figure out where it was used throughout your project. So you had to like find out like, okay, it was used in these three quarters in this drawing, so I need to replace them manually. And then I have to do that for every drawing for every quarter in the drawing, and then for every drawing in the project. So it was a huge mess of a workflow. So we wanted to make that whole workflow a lot more efficient. Then the second area that we wanted to work on was transitioning between quarter conditions. So you may have touched on some of this if you've been familiar with the Civil 3D 2023.1, I believe it was released. We introduced quarter transitions. And so previous to those transitions being available in recent versions of Civil 3D, you could transition between different conditions over the course of a quarter model, but it was a super clunky process. It took a lot of very picky and clicky, a lot of custom sub-assemblies and stuff like that to really get what you needed. And then you couldn't like reuse that condition like throughout your drawing or throughout your project. So it was a very manual process. If you, like, for example, had to model a driveway, you could do it. It was a painful process, and then you had to model every single driveway very, very painfully. It was a very tedious process. So we wanted to get that whole process a lot more efficient. Last thing that I wanted to touch on super quickly that I'm not going to be demoing necessarily, but huge area that we've spent a lot of time on is Civil 3D performance. And particularly what I wanted to focus on here is in the rebuilding civil objects bullet here. We spent a lot of time analyzing how the corridor model is rebuilt in previous versions of Civil 3D. And then we found some common triggers that would cause a corridor model to rebuild and lock up your drawing for a while. And so what we ended up doing was we very carefully went in and made it so that we analyzed how and when those corridor models were being rebuilt, and then reduced the number of cases in which a corridor model had to be rebuilt. So like if, for example, you modified one baseline of a very complicated corridor, if that baseline changed, we only now in Civil 3D 2024, that only that baseline and that region is rebuilt. It doesn't like rebuild everything else or the corridor if it doesn't need to. So that saves a great deal of processing time in Civil 3D. And we've had a couple of really, a whole bunch of really great feedback on the later versions of Civil 3D, including like from our customer satisfaction surveys. You're seeing between our couple of different surveys that we took over the last few years, we've been seeing some marked improvements in just overall customer satisfaction with the performance of Civil 3D. So really good news there. So with that, I'm going to pause here and I'm going to start up Civil 3D and show you some of these new things that we've been working on. The first thing I wanted to go through was just a bit of a recap of some of the newer corridor transitions workflows that we established in Civil 3D 2023 timeframe. And so this is a case where I have a pretty simple corridor in here in this particular drawing right now. And let's say like I have like this particular corridor is made up of, I think it's two regions. There's one region here, and then there's another one down there that's just kind of there. It's not a really great deal of purpose behind that second region, but it's there. But just the point here is that it's a very simple corridor, and this is just for the sake of the demo. But anyway, so once I pick my corridor, you'll see that I've got this Edit Corridor Transitions button up on the ribbon. So if I pick that, what you're going to see is, again, just the corridor transitions dialog box that's going to kind of let me walk through the process here. And I'm just going to scoot this out of the way. And then also just to let you know that, of course, a lot of customer feedback. Why can't you make all the dialog boxes in Civil 3D so that I can move around the drawing? This one we did, so you can have that open and still keep on moving around within Civil 3D to really make sure that you have the right context that you're viewing. So I'm just going to keep moving this thing around just for the sake of, just so that I have a good overview of what's going on here. So anyway, so what I'm going to do here is I want to create let's say I want to do a widening for like a turning lane going right onto this road out of this particular site. So what I can do is I'm just going to very quickly, and again, I'm going to go through this fairly quickly because this is just a recap. Hopefully you're familiar with some of this from previous version, but just in case you're not, here's a quick overview. So basically I'm creating a new transition set, and now I'm being prompted to pick which subassembly or subassembly name that I want to transition at this point. So I want to do a right-hand turn lane here, so I'm going to pick my my lane super elevation AOR, which is highlighted, and I can keep moving around and pick other subassemblies in my drawing if I'd like. But as you see here, I'm just going to pick it, and then once I pick that, next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to be prompted to which is the parameter of that particular subassembly that I want to transition. It can be any parameter within the subassembly. So in this case, it's a widening, so I want to pick width. And then in this case, and now it's going to tell me, okay, what's the start station of my transition. And so this particular corridor starts at 0, and I can, just as anything else, I can enter the name, I can enter the station value, or if I know it's 0, I can just enter 0. So now it's saying, okay, enter my parameter value at station 0. So this is one of the areas that we made a bit of a quality of life improvement to the transitions workflow. So in previous versions of Civil 3D, it didn't give you the value that was at the current station. So in this case, what I did is I picked, okay, station 0, the value for my lane width is what? It's 20. And so Civil 3D is now smart enough to pick that up for me. So that is a bit of a quality of life improvement, just so you don't have to already know what that value is off when you start. So I'm actually starting from 0, so I'm going to actually widen it here. So I'm going to go from a 20-foot lane to a 40-foot lane, let's say. So I'm going there, and then now what's the end station that I want? I'm just going to say I want to end this at station 150, just for the sake of argument. And then what's my parameter value there? I want to end that 40. And then now, where do I want my transition type to be? So this is just a straight shot, so I just want it to be just a very simple linear transition. Then there are other options available as well, of course, but play around with those at your leisure. So next I'm going to go to what do I want to do next? So my next station that I want to transition to is, let's say I want, now I'm going to go to station 200. And from there, I want to go back to my default lane width of 20. So I'm just going to press enter. And I'm going to have that be a linear transition as well, just for the sake of this particular demo. So I've got that in place now. And I'm going to put enter to end the command, just as my command prompt asked me to. And again, so just as hopefully you remember from seeing this in other demos or playing with it yourself, the quarter isn't rebuilt automatically just because we want you to be able to have as much time to interact with the quarter before triggering the quarter rebuild to apply things. So that's where this apply button comes into play. So I'm just going to press apply now. And then now you're going to see my my transition, my widening happen there. And so great things there. So that's just a super simple example. I mean, of course, you can do that still with offset geometry and stuff like that and still target the geometry. But this is just one example of something that you might be able to do with the transition. So something a bit more interesting that was one of my favorite use cases for this is, let's say I want to be able to do, like I mentioned earlier, a driveway or something a little bit more complicated. This is where the transition tool really comes into its own. So let's say like I want to drop a transition of a driveway or a curb ramp or whatever you want to, something along those lines, like right in here. Couple different ways you could do that. And so the way that I'm going to do this is I have a custom subassembly that I created that basically it's a curb with a sub base, and it's got a driveway that leads up into a sidewalk. And what this transition is going to do is I'm going to drop the curb down, and the driveway is going to kind of follow along with it while maintaining that height of the sidewalk. So we'll get into kind of how that looks in just a moment or two here, but I'm just going to show you how to create this transition. And this is just a 3D view just so you can kind of see what's happening in context. So if I go in here real quick, you'll see that this is kind of a shot of my curb and my lanes and all that kind of stuff. So I'm just going to zoom previous just so that you have a better idea of what's going on here. So I'm going to go back in here. And so now I'm going to create a new transition set here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say new transition set, and it's the same general series of prompts that I had before, where it's going to ask me which subassembly I want to create the transition on. I'm going to say my driveway curb drop subassembly. What's my parameter that I want to transition? I want my back of curb. So that's my first one right here, but I could use any of these if I wanted to. So I'll just pick my back of curb parameter. And then it's going to ask me for my which stations I want to drop these in at, and as well as what my values are. So at this point, just to speed things up, I know what I'm going to do here. So I'm just going to go station 655, and I want to start that at 5 or half a foot, which is what the curb height is by default. So that's fine. From there, my next, I want to go at 660. And from there, I want to have that curb drop down to 0. So I'm going to say OK. At that point, I'm just keeping my linear transitions for the time being. And then my end station for that, I want my end station to be 665. And then I'm going to say I want that still to be 0 for the time being, because it's just following along that 0 elevation for the time being. Linear. From there, I want to go 665. And then I want to go back up to 1/2 foot. And linear. And that's the end of the line for this particular transition. So I'm just going to set enter to end the command. And this is what I'm left with. Oh, I'm sorry. So I goofed up over here. No, I didn't actually. Disregard. So this is going from 5, from 1/2 foot down to 0, 0 to 0, and then 0 back up to 1/2 foot. So now that that's all in place, I'm going to click apply, and it's going to create that transition. So actually, yeah, I see where I goofed up here. So you're seeing here that it's going down. I actually wanted this this end station to actually end at 670, not where it started. So once I do that, I can fix that nice and easily. I can click apply. And there we have it. So now that looks a bit more correct. So yeah, so it's transitioning down 5, staying at 0, back up to 1/2 foot. So that's what my transition looks like. And if I kind of pick away from that, all those glyphs are a really great way to see kind of where you are in the context of your transition. So really good workflow there. Very helpful, a lot easier than modeling a driveway without using quarter transitions. So a couple different things you can do here. So what I'm going to do is, I mentioned those glyphs are really handy to kind of see where all of your transitions in a given model are. And so one of the things that we did here, like if I open this drawing and I didn't know that any transitions were created, it can be challenging to figure out like, okay, how are these put together? So what I can do now is there's this tool over on the quarter context menu in Prospector, where if I say show transitions, it'll just kind of go through and it highlights all of my transitions in this green color. So this is a really quick and easy way for me to see, like, okay, if the quarter is modeled in some odd way that I am not familiar with from just coming into this drawing for the first time, I can use that tool to see, okay, there's a quarter transition here, there's one over here. So really handy tool in that regard. Other things you can do in order to kind of find your way around from the quarter transitions dialog box, we have things in place now where, again, just kind of quality of life improvements, where basically if I say, okay, where is this particular driveway? I can zoom to it, I can pan to other things, whatever. So really simple way to just kind of, again, just find your way around in a model that you're not necessarily familiar with where all these things are. So good things. Other things, like while I mentioned earlier, I'm not going to demo a particular use case for it, but another important thing that I mentioned, that there was another region in this particular corridor down here. So there were a lot of cases where we got feedback from customers that said they needed to be able to create transitions that spanned across a couple of different regions. But the tricky part was that in cases where, like, if it's like, for example, like in this, if just for the sake of argument, if I had a transition that used like this region to this region for both these lanes, and I, for a couple different reasons, may have had to put like a small gap in between these two regions so that they would model correctly, so that I didn't have two sections on top of each other, the quarter transition tool would have to end at that particular gap, and it wouldn't let you span those two gaps. So so basically what we ended up doing was we created a new command setting to let you have a tolerance for a gap. So basically in quarter settings, under the command settings and edit quarter transition, if you go into edit command settings, you'll see it's off by default. But if you go in here, you'll now see there's a new command setting here for transition gap tolerance. And so basically what I can do So if I expand this, basically I can, if I would like to, I can turn this particular tool on, and then that will let me set a maximum tolerance. So in this case, if it's, this is 2/100ths of a foot, if my gap is within that tolerance, then my transition will work quite well across the gap between those two regions. So another really good tool that we, just based on customer feedback, we incorporated into this tool just to make it as flexible as possible. So the next thing we did, so let's talk about like if I mentioned repeatability and shareability. So shareability we had down fairly well in previous versions of the quarter transitions tool. And by that I mean that we had this tool in place where you could very easily export a transition to a CSV file so that you could then post that CSV file for others on your project team to use, so that they could, like, for example, create a CSV file that had that driveway transition in it, and then they could just import it into their drawing and drop it into their quarter model, update some station values, and then they were off and running. We wanted to make it easier to do that. So instead of the sharing part is great, but we wanted to make it so that you could do a little bit less, force you to do less in Excel in a separate application than just working within Civil 3D proper. So what we ended up doing, like let's say for example, a couple different things. In the Excel workflow, I had to export it to Excel, and then I had to like bring it in and then modify all of my station values, for example. Like if I wanted to create this driveway in multiple places, I had to copy it out to export it to Excel, copy the rows, paste them, and then update my station values, bring it back in, and create it that way. It worked, but it was more tedious than we wanted it to be. So what we ended up doing, first thing is we added this lock icon, and basically if you hover over the transition set, you'll see this unlocked icon. I'm going to lock that for now, and then you'll see the value in that in just a second here. So basically now that this is locked, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to right click on it, and what the great thing I can do now is I can simply copy transition set, and then a couple different things I could do here. I could simply paste it into the same quarter, and it's going to give me the same values because it just is. But basically what I could do, if I had multiple quarters in this model, I could copy that. And then if I had multiple quarters, I could pick a different quarter and drop it into that quarter on any given baseline that I have in that particular quarter. So great way to copy things across a particular drawing, and then you still have the Excel workflow if you'd like to export it to an external file and then bring it into another drawing. The other step in this whole workflow that you can do is, I mentioned this was locked, and so now that this is locked, what I want to do here is, like, let's say for example I wanted to start this particular transition set at station like 855. So now I can do that, and once I change this one value to 855, once I click out of that or hit enter, it updates all of my station values to basically accommodate for that change in the one station. So again, that lock icon just locks the entire set together so that you can do that much more easily and just kind of move the entire transition set as a unit. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to click apply, and then I'll kind of show you where we were with that transition that we just dropped in there. And there it is. So basically I could have just gone to doing the whole eating my own dog food kind of thing, and instead of panning and zooming around, what I should have done is just done my pan to function, and it takes you right there, just like that. So those are some of the new enhancements that we have on the quarter transitions front. I'm going to pause for just a moment, and then I'll show you some of the newer things that we've done around subassembly sharing, which is really new tool within Civil 3D 2024 that we're very excited about, and we're hoping that you will see some great value in it. So that's coming up next. Okay, so now let's talk about some of the changes that we've made to the subassembly import and sharing process that had previously been in Civil 3D. So if I go into my tool palettes, this is kind of where a lot of the magic happens. So I've got a couple different things going on here. So I open up my tool palette, and I've got a couple of, one palette here with just a couple of custom subassemblies on it. So a few things that you might remember from earlier versions that we just released not too terribly long ago is when you hover over a custom subassembly, you'll see that there's this notion of a version. That's a long-standing customer request that we had to basically make it easier to have a better understanding of exactly which version of a specific custom subassembly you have in a given drawing. So subassemblies can change over time as your standards change or your projects change. So customers needed a quick way to determine, like, if a life of a subassembly has been like 6 different versions of it, how do you know which one a given drawing has in it? So this is just a quick tooltip that you're seeing here just to kind of show you what that looks like. Then if I go into, for example, the properties for like this particular curb drop subassembly that we are working with in the transitions demo, you'll see here that I've got, like, my properties have all the usual information in it that you would expect. It does have the version displayed in there, and it also shows up in the actual subassembly properties dialog box as well. And so this one's just a version 0.1. This other simple subassembly I have in here on the tool palette is version 0.2. And I'll get into kind of where that version comes into really high usefulness in a couple minutes here. But just for the sake of argument, I'm going to close this and then just deselect it here. So let's say, for example, let's say I wanted to create I'm not going to go through the entire process right here, but what if I wanted to add like a new subassembly to my tool palette here? So my CAD manager maybe has created a new subassembly, and I want to be able to use that in this drawing. So same workflow that I had before, where I would just say import subassemblies from the right-click menu. One of the things that we added here is this link directly to PKT files checkbox, and it's checked on by default. And if you hover over the tooltip here, you'll see a little message here that's telling you that by selecting this, the PKT file will use its existing path and will not be imported into the program data folder. So what that is meaning is essentially what happened in previous versions of Civil 3D is when you imported a subassembly onto your tool palette, that subassembly was being dumped into your program data folder on your machine. And so a couple different reasons that we are changing that behavior. First being kind of a big one in that Microsoft is moving towards basically not enabling you to store executables in your program data or in your user profile on Windows. And so because the PKT file is basically like a zipped up package of a whole bunch of different types of files that all make a subassembly work, it's an executable really. That's going to kind of cause problems in later versions. So we wanted to get ahead of that. And then the second part that makes this a big deal is that, again, this is, if it's being stored as it's pointing to the existing path, this is going to enable you to point to a shared location. So if I have all of my subassemblies for a given project all stored on either a shared network drive somewhere or even in Autodesk Docs, then I can point this instance of this subassembly directly to that shared area. And then from there, if new subassembly versions are created within that, or if a version is updated, then I automatically get the benefit of that new version just within my instance of Civil 3D. I don't have to now go through the painful process that we had in place earlier, where if you wanted to, if you're working on a subassembly and you need to test it, or you get a new version of it or something like that, if I already have it used in my drawing in previous versions of Civil 3D, I had to, someone had to tell me that the subassembly had changed, and then I had to go in and like delete it off my tool palette, close down Civil 3D, open it back up, and import it onto my tool palette, and then try it out. And then, if someone has to like update it again, then you have to go through that same process for each and every subassembly. And then plus, then you had to like update that like new or change subassembly in all of the different quarters in your drawing and for every single drawing in your project. So really long process that was no fun at all to do. And so we've taken that out of the mix and made it a lot easier just by letting you post PKT files to a shared location, point directly to the PKT file on that path, and just go with it. And I'll show you in a couple minutes how seamless that whole process is in a second. So I'm going to close out of this, and then, so that's on the tool palette side. One of the other things that you'll notice in Civil 3D 2024 and 2024.1 is there's this new subassemblies collection and prospector. So what this is going to do is it's going to tell you which subassemblies are being used in this drawing. A couple different collections here. Like for example, I have, just for the sake of, I'm going to dump this demo sidewalk subassembly on into this drawing just so you can see kind of what's going on here. But if I drag this out of the way so you can actually see, and then if I add this as a detached subassembly, just dropping it in here just for the purposes of a demo. So you'll see here, like that's now in my drawing. I'm good to go. And then now you're going to see in my subassemblies collection. So now I have these two PKT files that I have. So I have an instance of that demo sidewalk that I just dropped in. And if I expand it out, it's just a standalone demo sidewalk. But then if I like open up this driveway curb drop and then expand it further, it'll actually tell you where it's being used. So in this case, like this driveway curb drop subassembly is being used, and its version 0.1 is being used in this named quarter right here. So very, very handy way for you to see a bit more information about your quarter. So, or I'm sorry, a bit more information about where this subassembly came from, where it's used. There's the source path in there just so you can really get a good feeling for where it is, how it's being consumed in this particular drawing. Something else you'll see this other collection here for other subassemblies. And if I expand this, you'll see this is going to be a collection that is showing, this is new in 24.1 actually. This collection shows all of these subassemblies that were not created using the PKT file format. So anything that you've created using Subassembly Composer, that's the PKT file, will show up in this root subassemblies collection. Other subassemblies is basically a collection that will show any of the other subassemblies that you have here. So basic curb and lane super elevation AOR are some of the out-of-the-box subassemblies that were just shipped with Civil 3D by default. You'll also see subassemblies that were created either using being programmed by .NET or that were created using polylines. Those will all appear in the other subassemblies collection, and so that just lets you know that they're being used, but they don't have quite the same functionality in this context as the PKT subassemblies. So, and then also one of the other things that you'll notice is that in Project Explorer, and again, this is another outstanding tool that we've been shipping with Civil 3D for a bit now, just to let you have a much bigger picture of how your whole Civil 3D model is set up. Project Explorer for 24.1 we also included all that same functionality in Prospector on this new Subassemblies tab. So if I go in here, you'll see a whole bunch of new functionality in Project Explorer related to sharing subassemblies. So you'll see things like, I mean, again, you're getting like the full context of a given cross section that you have built, like in this assembly here. You're seeing everything that's going on in context here. You're seeing like a bunch of different warnings here, like This one, that demo sidewalk that I dropped in as a detached subassembly, that's not being used by any quarters, so it's telling you, hey, there's something going on here, and then it lets you kind of do a couple things about here. Like you can either add it to, you can zoom to it, you can kind of do different things with it within the context of Project Explorer, and it'll tell you. Or if I go again to some of the others, like the driveway curb drop, for example, that we keep touching, it lets you change a lot of the different parameters and for the given region that it's in. Tells you which regions it's used in, whether there are any property set data associated with it, and all that kind of stuff. So we might touch back on Project Explorer in a little while, but for the time being, I'm going to just kind of minimize this, and then we'll get into some other things with this particular drawing. So stay tuned. All right, so now let's make a change to my custom subassembly so that we can see where this really comes in handy. So I have this custom subassembly here, and I'm going to go now into Subassembly Composer. And what I want to do really is just to make a really obvious change here. So let's say, for example, I wanted to change the thickness of my sidewalk and my driveway here. Let's make it something pretty obvious. So right now I have it as a 1/2 foot depth, so let's make that a full foot. All right, so I've made my change. I've got my nice thick sidewalk and driveway now. So at this point, for the sake of this argument, I'm not going to change the version number. If I wanted to create a completely new version, I could. It could be a version 0.2, but for this purposes of this demo, I'm just going to go with just using this same version. So let's, for example, maybe I made a very minor change and I didn't want to create a new version of this. So I'm just going to say at this point, just save my subassembly as it is right now. And now I'm going to go back into Civil 3D and we'll see what happens here. So nothing happened yet. And so if you were to open up, if I were to close this drawing and then reopen it again, I would get this same notification that I'm going to show you in a second here. But another way the way that you can basically use to just kind of kick it in the pants and make sure that you're going to get like notified of any kind of changes is at the subassemblies level. If you just right click it and hit refresh, this is going to go out, and any of the PKTs that you have in place that use that point to a relative path, like that new functionality that I just showed you a minute or two ago, it's going to go out to that path and see if there are any changes to the subassembly. So it did that, and there are a whole bunch of different notifications here. So if I hover over them one at a time here, you'll just see it like the shield is telling you that subassemblies are either out of date or cannot be found. Then if you go down the tree, it'll tell you things like this particular version is out of date. So, okay, that's understandable because you just saw me change that. So, and again, because it's a bit smarter than it used to be, it's also giving you similar notifications up at the quarter level. So basically, if I hover over any of these, it's going to show me that my subassembly is out of date, and this particular subassembly is used in both these quarters. Okay, so let's make this right then. So if I had a whole bunch of different custom subassemblies in here that were out of date, I could refresh them all at the same time, or I could just go on a one-by-one basis. But just for the sake of argument, let's say I want to update all of my custom subassemblies to get the latest and greatest version of them. And you could do this at any point. So if I just right-click and I click refresh, it's going to go back out and it's going to do everything that I need it to do. It's going to pull that new PKT information into this drawing, and it's going to update my assembly, and it's going to rebuild my quarter. It's going to give me this notification here that's going to say subassemblies in both of these have been modified and need to be rebuilt. What do I want to do? I want to rebuild them. So I'm just going to say rebuild. Now I get my event viewer notification telling me that my out-of-date subassemblies have been updated for that particular one and for that particular assembly that I was using. And now both of my quarters that were using that subassembly are all updated as well. So I'm just going to click out of that. And that comes in handy because, I mean, if you had to use this workflow or the previous workflow in older versions of Civil 3D, if I had like a custom subassembly that changed and it was being used by multiple corridors, there was no real good way to make that change and cascade that change into multiple corridors. So it wasn't smart enough to tell me like this particular subassembly is being used in all these different corridors. I would have to go into those corridors, find out which version it was using, and then I'd have to manually swap them out and rebuild the corridors and everything. So fortunately, this new workflow is a lot smarter that you can now make that change just in mass. So really, really good workflow there. So another common thing that happens, if you are working on a project and for some reason things happen, what happens if someone does some rearranging in one of your projects and some of your subassemblies get moved, like maybe your subassembly collection where you store all of your custom subassemblies got moved. We can account for that as well. So let's say for just the sake of a demo, I'm going to move this driveway curb drop subassembly and I'm just going to drop it into another folder on my desktop just to show you what's going on here. So I'm just going to dump it into this folder here, paste it, and there it is. So now if I go back into Civil 3D, and same thing, if I were to close it and reopen it, I would get the same kind of functionality here, but I'm just going to do this refresh tool here just to kind of show you what's going on here. So this is giving us another set of warnings here. So this is, again, giving you warnings that, hey, something's going on here, out of date or cannot be found. Now this is giving us a new, like this red question mark here. And if I hover over it, it's saying file not found. So what I can do, very similar workflow, I can right click on it at any level, either of those levels and everything, and I can say fix missing paths. Again, it's a fairly simple workflow. It just tells you, it just gives you like a quick dialog box here that lets you, as the tool implied, to fix the path. So this is telling you like what subassembly it is, what the name is in the version, all that kind of good stuff, and then what the source path is. And so at this point, if I know where the path is, if I can just pretty much go to that new path. Obviously I need to know where that path is, but at least it gives me a tool here to go through and fix that path. So I can go in here, find it, and say open, and then apply it, and then it'll also give me I can do this for all of my subassemblies that are missing in the current drawing and everything. So I fixed that path. It looks like it's happy now. And if I click apply, now it's going to take care of all those warnings for me. So again, much easier workflow than we had used in previous versions of Civil 3D. This was a big sticking point for a lot of our customers that want to be able to create standard versions of subassemblies and other content and have an easier way to share that content across a project team. So this is a great way for people to just have one kind of single source of truth for all of their subassembly content, point everything, all your projects to that particular source, and keep them all updated. And again, this is all about like if you can have multiple versions of the same subassembly in your tool palette, in your drawing, and it'll accommodate all those new versions. You can use the version that you really need to use. So a lot of really great new stuff happening in the subassembly sharing front. As you can see, we've been hard at work on updating the corridor modeling process to make it considerably easier and more flexible than it had been in previous versions of Civil 3D. We're not done yet. If you want to get a better picture of where we're going with the corridor modeling process or Civil 3D in general, I wanted to take this opportunity to just basically do a plug for our public roadmap that we have. It's on our AEC Tech Drop blog is the best place to access it. And I mean, if you just go in and just Google Autodesk Civil Infrastructure Public Roadmap, it'll land you at this blog eventually. But basically, I mean, the roadmap is in here. I'm going to go into an expanded view of this and under consideration for future versions. But once you get into the roadmap, and you can navigate through it quite well through here. You can scroll and do all this kind of stuff that I'm going to show you, but I'm just going to show you on a larger version of it. So once you're in here, you'll see a bunch of different tabs up at the top here that'll let you know things that are in progress. Things that are on this page are actively being developed by our teams right now. There's also up next, which is stuff that's kind of like next on the list of things that we have under consideration. Later is kind of much later on down the road, just strategically we'll get to them. And then released is all stuff that that you should see it very familiar with, like things that I just talked about today, and then things that are in other versions of Civil 3D that we have recently released, and we've tagged all of them with the appropriate version of the product that these different things have appeared in. So really good stuff to know, just to let you know that we've been definitely hard at work picking things off of this roadmap as we've been going. But things that we have in progress, just very quick, brief idea of what we have going on here. On the quarter side, I mean, creating quarters from multiple feature line baselines has been a request from customers for quite a while. It started off as an API request, and then it lets you, we're actually building out the UI so that you can kind of just select a whole bunch of either alignments and profile pairs or a whole bunch of feature lines all at the same time and then create a quarter just in one shot instead of adding baselines one by one. So that's one thing. And then just as an overview of kind of how to really influence this roadmap, you'll see like when you pick on one of these cards, like if I go back out of here and I'll pick on this one, for example. So roadway signs and markings. If I pick this, it gives you a bit more information about what specifically the ask is. And then it gives you the opportunity to rank how important a particular topic is for you. So if something is super critical, must have for you, you can vote for it like that. Give us any feedback, whether it's a business case or anything. You can put that in here to add your weight to it. And then again, email address, just so that if we have any sort of follow-up questions and want your additional feedback and clarity, then we can contact you. So definitely we absolutely look at this public roadmap so that you can see, so that we can kind of gauge what's really important to people while we're digging into different areas of the product. So the different categories here between just platform, things that'll benefit all customers, design such as roadway design and things like that, civil structures, existing conditions, drainage, digital delivery, so on and so forth. Anything that has a little light bulb icon next to it is something that was taken directly from the Civil 3D Ideas Forum. And so these are user submitted items that appeared up on that forum, and we have links out to each of those items. And sometimes, like if I go into the subassembly sharing one, you'll see, where is that one? Oh boy, here we go. This is the subassembly sharing one. In a lot of cases, if it's an idea, it in many cases will have been spawned by multiple different ideas. So just to let you know that when we are working on a given feature or workflow, we comb through the Civil 3D Ideas Forum to find any ideas that are related to that particular area so that we can accomplish as many customer requests as we possibly can during the development cycle of a given feature. So just wanted to kind of let you folks know about that. But anyway, you'll see a bunch of stuff about in progress and what's next as far as, up next we have a whole bunch of different things happening here, from different things that are under consideration on the quarter workflows, such as, just streamlining things by making alignments and profiles at the same time, making it easier to edit and create vertical geometry, trimming a corridor, all sorts of different things that we have under consideration. So definitely encourage you to please go out to this public roadmap and vote for the things that are the most important to you, so that we can really make sure that we accomplish as much as we can to keep you folks as happy as we possibly can. So with that, I wanted to say thank you very much for your time in watching this. I hope that this was helpful, and I really hope that you folks will be able to get some really solid use out of the core workflows that I just demonstrated, between the transition workflows that'll make things easier to do detail design and transitions, as well as just the making it much easier to share and distribute custom subassemblies throughout your project teams. Any feedback is always welcome. Please feel free to reach out to me directly at tim.yarris@autodesk.com at any time, and I'll be more than happy to answer any questions that you have. So with that, thanks again.